Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Katannuko bhande janato katang passato. Imasmincha saviññānake kāye bahiddacha sabba nimittesu. Ahinkara maminkara mananusaya na honti iti. Dear Venerable Brother, Dhamma friends, actually during the last couple of months, we have taken a particular sutta which is called Punnama Sutta, literally meaning the full moon. So it's an interesting incident happened during the Buddha's time, where Buddha was dwelling it in Migaramatu Pasada, the mansion built by I think Visakha, Migaramatu Pasada. That's also actually in the Savatthi, where the famous Jetanarama was built by Anathapindika. Now the other monastery is the Migaramatu Pasada, built by Visakha. Now at that time it was a full moon Poya day, and Buddha and the Sangha actually came out from the monastery, and they were staying in the open environment. At night the moon is also there. This is a kind of a beautiful scenery. We can imagine that Buddha and the Sangha simply dwelling outside in the moonlight. Now at that time one particular monk wants to ask a question, actually a series of questions. So he raised up and he is asking permission from the Buddha. Bhante, is it all right? If you don't mind, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. And then Buddha permitted him, gave him permission, and asked him to sit down and ask the questions. According to the commentary, he is a teacher, an arahant, and he actually wants to get certain answers directly from the Buddha, so that his students can directly get the Buddha's teaching directly from the Buddha, rather than he teaching them. So he wants maybe to confirm his own teaching. And he's asking a series of questions related to the aggregates actually. So if I simply touch them very quickly, so he's asking what are the 5 clinging aggregates. So you might have heard about the 5 clinging aggregates. Rupa Upadana Khandha, the form clinging aggregate. Vedana Upadana Khandha, the feeling clinging aggregate. Sanyo Upadana Khandha, the perceptions clinging aggregate. Sankharu Upadana Khandha, the formations clinging aggregate. And the Vijnana Upadana Khandha, the consciousness clinging aggregate. Now this is how Buddha explained to us the whole experience. Now these clinging aggregates are not outside us, so they are really us. So that's what we need to understand. They are not something outside, something alien, rather they are what we are experiencing. Maybe physical, maybe mental, whole our complete type of experience can be explained through the 5 clinging aggregates. Now, after confirming the Buddha's this explanation, now he is asking, so what is the root for this clinging aggregate? Then Buddha mentioned, ime ko bhikkhu panchupadana khandha chandamulakati. So it is based on the root of desire. So desire is the root cause for the clinging aggregates. So we can imagine think like aggregates are there, but because of our internal ignorance, the mind go and clung to them. So as a result of that, we can say, so the mind is clung to form aggregate, perceptions aggregate, feeling aggregate, formations aggregate, then the consciousness aggregate. Then we can interpret as they are clinging aggregates. And then he is asking, are the clinging aggregates and the upadana, the grasping, are the same or different? And then Buddha answer like, the upadana, the clinging aggregates, are in a way a bit different, So attachment to this clinging aggregates is what we call the upadana. And then he is asking, is there any kind of a variety to this chandaraga, to these different desires? Are there any variation, are there any diversity into these desires? And then Buddha mentioned, yes, there is. So with respect to the future, you may have a desire, let the form aggregate be like this. Say for example, you are currently sick, bodily there may be an ailment, probably you may have a wish, let this body be healthy. Maybe something belong to you, assume that your house is in a kind of a trouble, and you wish, okay, let this house be more convenient, more comfortable, more luxurious, whatever. So likewise, with respect to all the different kinds of aggregates, we can have a futuristic desire. Let this be like this. Form aggregate, let the feeling would be like this. May I be healthy, may I be happy, may my son be happy, may my son be wealthy, whatever the way. So we have some future-related desire. It is varying with respect to the form, feelings, perceptions, formations, consciousness. So it's a diversified, different kinds of desires. And then he's asking why this is called kandahadi vachananti, why they are called aggregates. And then Buddha gave a more descriptive answer, telling it is not a mere present moment aggregate, what we are talking, but it has some 11 dimensions. Ati tanagata pachuppan, that means whatever the aggregates which were in the past, what is currently happening right now, what's going to happen in the future, and what is closer to you, what is far from you, what is you considered as internal, what you consider as external, what you consider as more refined, what you consider as more gross, hina panita, oladika sukhuma, inferior, superior. So likewise, there are different kinds of categorizations are there. All are included in this form aggregate. So therefore, whatever physical we can include under this form aggregate. So it is not our mere body what we call as the form aggregate. Maybe what is external, all the physical entities can be included in the form aggregate. And whatever the past, what has already happened, already passed away, already destroyed, all that comes under the form aggregate. What's going to happen in the future, that also comes under the form aggregate. It's a vast area. And similarly the feelings, similarly the perception, similarly mental formations, various different kinds of thoughts, intentions, all comes under that. And then the consciousness, also very broad. So therefore, we can't find anything outside the aggregates in that sense, except Nibbana, we can say, if you want to put it completely away from that. So the Buddha's categorization, this explanation encompasses the whole experience. All physical are included to the form aggregate. All mental experience is included under the 4 different aggregates: feeling, perception, formations, and the consciousness. And then he further asks, what is the cause? Now we are dealing with the consciousness aggregate because we have already discussed the other aggregates. Let me from here onwards focus on the consciousness aggregate. Actually last month also we discussed on consciousness aggregate, but today also I am going to further discuss on the consciousness aggregate. Konuko bhante hetu ko paccayo viññānasa paññapanāya. So what is the reason, what is the cause for the establishment, or we can say manifestation, of the consciousness aggregate? And then Buddha gave the answer, nama rupang hetu nama rupa paccayo viññānasa paññapanāya. So the nama rupa, name and form, is the cause for consciousness aggregate to come into being. Probably you can remember I have taken the simile of the cinema simile given by Most Venerable Katukurunde Ñāṇananda Thero to explain this dependency. how consciousness depends on the name and form, how name and form depends on the consciousness. Nama rupa pacca vijnanam, vijnana pacca nama rupa. So there's an interrelationship between these two, very well explained by the cinema simile. I am not going to explain it again. I hope that you can remember how it is somewhat dependent. And then he's asking the next section, how the Sakkaya Ditthi going to happen with respect to the consciousness aggregate. Similarly, he is asking the question, next question, how the Sakkaya Ditthi won't happen with respect to the consciousness aggregate. So actually last month we discussed up to that. How one might feel I am with respect to consciousness aggregate, and how one might feel this is myself with respect to consciousness aggregate, or he might think I am inside consciousness, or inside myself there is consciousness. So 4 different possibilities are there with respect to the consciousness aggregate, and that is how we sometimes attribute a self to our conscious experience. As we even discussed during the Dhamma discussion, so whenever a thought comes to our mind, we think, I am thinking. A thought came to my mind. So this is how we interpret, this is how we communicate, this is how we explain to others. So I thought like that. So this is my idea. So we have a kind of a relationship to this thought. Either it is my thought, this is my idea, or I thought like that. Either with respect to the thought we have a kind of a relationship and we consider it as my thought, kind of an ownership. Or on the other hand, the thinking task we attribute to a person telling, I am thinking. So these are different possibilities, isn't it? So this is how we communicate to the others, this is how we refer to the others, this is how we are talking to the others with respect to our thinking world. Actually, it can even comes under the formations aggregate. Thoughts, ideas may comes under the formations aggregate, but the task, the thinking, the function, actually that cognition part, that comes under the consciousness aggregate. Because consciousness Buddha defines as vijanati. Vijanati tiko tasma vijnananti uchati. Vijanati. You cognize. That is why you call it consciousness. Vijanati. Say for example, there are many people here. So how I can distinctly know, this Mr. Cabral. How I distinctly know. So that represents the function of the consciousness. So the one task of the consciousness is to distinctly cognize. Amidst many other objects, you can particularly recognize, this is it. This it is. Say for example, you are eating something. While you are eating, and different tastes are there. You are eating maybe rice, curry, different curries and all that. You are chewing it, but you can recognize, it is sweet taste, this is salty taste, maybe bitter taste, sour taste. So different tastes are there. So while even eating, you can distinctly recognize. And say you are going through certain different kinds of feelings, still you can recognize, my back has a little pain. Oh, I am feeling pleasant, I am feeling happy, I am feeling a little sorrowful. So all that, the distinctly knowing different feelings, that also comes under the function of the consciousness aggregate. So different examples in that way Buddha and Venerable Sariputta has given the task of the consciousness is to distinctly know. When many things are there, many experiences are there, but you can distinctly know, this it is. So this is the function of the consciousness aggregate. Now, when we are knowing like that, the problem is we attribute it to a self. So that is how the Sakkaya Ditthi comes into the being. Either whole experience we consider as a person, a self, as a single entity, as a huge thing we consider as one thing from the Ganasanya, from the compactness. And again, we attribute a self to that, an individual to that experience. Say, for example, say you are watching a movie. Now, if you properly analyze it, actually assume that it is a TV which is broadcasting a movie. Actually, what is happening is a certain pixels are being shown instantaneously in a screen. That is what is there. But we consider it as something. There's a person there, he is there, she is there, different things are there. So we attribute a person to that, isn't it? Rather than considering it as pixels. Now say, yesterday, the parliament started, right? So different people are there. So you are watching the speech from the president. So that is the president who is speaking. What you are looking at is the president. But actually you see pixels in the screen, but you attribute it to a person. This is the president's speech. Isn't it? That is how we interpret. So for us, there is a president in front of me. Even though I am here, so I can see the president talking. Who is looking at that? I am here. I am the one looking at it. I am the one watching it. So likewise, all our experiences, either seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking or knowing, we attribute to a person. Either to the outside there is a person, or there is a thing, so-called thing, and here also a person, a man, a woman, myself. And when we have that kind of a categorization, that kind of a perspective, we are tempted to think the other part. We tempt to proliferate. We tempt to overthink. We tempt to conceive. One important term, conceiving, manyati. It's a very interesting, very important term that Buddha used, manyana, manyati. It translated into English as conceiving. Thinking that there is a person here and I am so and so. I am talking. I am listening. I am seeing. I am hearing. I can hear. Or I am tasting. I am thinking. Underneath presumption is that there is a person. That's a person. There's an individual here. Hope you are clear with it. That's an assumption that there is a person here. So I am seeing, I am hearing, I am smelling, I am tasting, I am cognizing. I am listening, I am talking, I am teaching, whatever the way, all different activities we can attribute a person. This is how we communicate, this is how our languages are prepared, all that. Now, how Sakkaya Ditthi not going to happen? So we need to stop this conceiving, basically. In one sense, at the gross level, we need to understand, okay, what I am seeing is not really a person, an entity, a thing, but it is a combination of so many factors, and different contributing factors are there. And similarly, here also it is not I see, but seeing happens due to various causes. I and the object comes together in line, and then the seeing function going to happen. Very scientific, isn't it? Quite scientific. And similarly, the sound. Certain sounds are there. Here the eardrum is there. So the hearing happens. Who is hearing? So there is no person as such who hear, but hearing is there. So it's very difficult in a way to understand, because we are used to attribute this hearing to a person. I am hearing. Immediately the underneath acceptance that there is a person is there. We have used that from our childhood. We have used that, we are familiar with that, that's how we communicate. So it has become the norm. It has become an accepted norm. There is a person here, I am talking, and you guys are simply listening, I am listening. So it's the typical conventional truth. But unfortunately, this conventional truth has become too far. So I can't come outside that conventional truth. I can't limit my these conventions to mere conventions. I am being trapped in the convention. Now, there's another interesting question. Now we can start from today, the sermon. Konuko bhante viññānassa assādu, ko ādīnavo king Nissarana. So that monk next asks, Bhante, what is the asada? What is the delight in this consciousness aggregate? Yang viññānam paticca uppajjate sukhang somanassang ayang viññānassa assādu. So Buddha is answering, so there may be a certain delight, there may be a certain happiness, there may be certain happiness, sukha, coming because of this function. When you see, there may be a little happiness. Say you are looking at someone which you desire, which you love, which you like. That seeing function brings you some happiness. You like to see. So similarly, there may be a song or melody which you like to hear. So that hearing actually delights you, gives you some happiness. Smelling, tasting, touching, thinking also very similar. So all those activities might produce certain kind of a happiness, a certain kind of a pleasure because of that hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, knowing. So that is the happiness involved there, delight involved there. So Buddha don't deny it. It is there. He accepts it. It is there. So that's why we like to see, that's why we like to hear, smell, taste, touch, think even. And thinking also produces some amount of a happiness. So that's why people are fond of thinking. They delight in thinking. They like to think rather than keeping the mind quiet. So people like to proliferate. People like to conceptualize rather than simply keeping the mind quiet. Which one you like? Would you like to keep your mind quiet, enjoy the inner silence, or would you like to think? So typically we are into a kind of an addiction of thinking. Papancha birata paja. So Buddha mentions, so this folk actually kind of addicted or engrossed in the thinking, obsession, proliferation. Kind of a habit, it has a tendency. They are tempted to think. They are obsessed to think. But on the other hand, if one is more into the Vipassana, more into thorough understanding, probably they may understand the danger in such obsessive thinking, conceptualization, unnecessary thinking, all that. Probably now you may desire to calm down the mind, relax the mind, make it peaceful, enjoy certain amount of inner silence. Now you are moving towards that direction because of the Dhamma, because of the Buddha's teaching in a way. Now, the next section. So what is the Ādīnava? So there Buddha is answering, Yang viññānaṁ aniccaṁ dukkhaṁ viparināma dhammāṁ ayang viññānassa ādīnavo. So all this experience is not a permanent experience. Even though you hear and gain certain kind of a happiness, that hearing can change. You can't expect that happiness to be every time, every day, forever. It can change to otherwise. In one sense, your ear faculty might weaken, so you can't hear properly. On the other hand, what you hear don't make you happy because it is something different now. The voice has changed, the other person has changed, or he's talking something completely which you don't want to hear. So likewise, this hearing can't make you every time happy. It can change. Either the content change, the person change, the qualities change, or your hearing capacity change. All different contributing factors are continuously changing. They are quite vulnerable. So how can you expect continuous happiness using this action of hearing? Similarly, the seeing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. So basically, all these faculties which are contributing towards smelling, tasting, touching, all that are very vulnerable. You can't guarantee their function. So you may be happy about your skill right now. You may be happy about your skill of seeing, hearing, smelling, all that, but you can't guarantee it. They are subject to change. And their content also going to change. You can't have any kind of an agreement. Please talk to me only lovable words. Please tell me I love you every day. Sometimes we like to tell like that. I love you forever. But maybe next day you want to file a divorce case. So this is the reality. We need to understand that. So we can't expect the other person not to change. He's every time talk all lovable words, every day telling me I love you, my darling. So things can change. So that's the adinava, that's the danger. So you can't guarantee this experience. So conditioned. There are so many other factors influencing this experience. So this whole thing is beyond your control. You can't have a full control over this, any of the functions. Either your faculty level, you have no control over your seeing. Can you maintain the same crystal clear clarity of your seeing forever? I am also using spectacles. I can't see properly now. But I was able to, but now not. Same thing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, everything. So sometimes even though I think this is not the way the body may be functioning, sometimes such cases are there. You want to move your leg, but it is not moving. Our mortal functions are, what's that, motor functions or something. It's not really synchronizing with our thoughts. You want to intentionally move, but the body is not moving, not behaving according to your thought. So such cases are there. So likewise, we are talking very vulnerable system. There are many contributing causes for proper functioning of this whole thing. The moment any of these contributing functions change, everything, the system may malfunction in a way. So that's the danger. And then he is asking the question, what is the Nissarana? What is the escape? So, yo viññānasmiñ Chandaraga vinayo Chandaraga pahanam idang viññānassa nissarananti. So, to any of these functions, if you don't have any desire, if you don't have any attachment, if you don't have any grasping, so that is the escape. It is not that you close your eyes and you become deaf and you become blind and you stop all that. That is not the solution. While seeing, can you avoid any grasping? While hearing, can you avoid any desires so that there won't be any grasping? While smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, thoughts when it is coming, can you stop that grasping part? Can you stop that desiring part, attachment part? So that is the escape. So that's a very interesting answer. So sometimes people might think, okay, I have to become unconscious, isn't it? So people have that kind of a argument. So how about I become unconscious? So that's why they sometimes completely make them insane. They want to become crazy. They are insert in certain drugs. They commit suicide. So they want to become completely, go for a kind of a different direction, because seeing may be troublesome, and what you see is really heartbreaking. What you hear may be heartbreaking. You have to stop it. I want to get rid of it. You commit suicide. And you go away. You run away. So but Buddha doesn't give that answer. He simply say, while seeing, can you have a mind which is independent of seeing? That's a very intelligent kind of an answer. While you are hearing, can you keep the mind quiet without getting mixed up with what you hear? Do you have a capacity to keep the mind independent? While smelling, tasting, touching, is there a capacity to maintain an independent mind? Similarly, when thoughts are coming, rather than being fooled by these thoughts, are you able to maintain yourself at a different level? So that's a radical kind of a solution, isn't it? It is not that you are blind, making yourself blind or deaf. You still function as a normal human being, but at a different level. Ditte ditta matang. So at that level you see, but it's a mere seeing. Your mind does not produce a self into the experience. You are not conceiving at any level. Now, similarly, when you are hearing, you do hear. Still you continue to hear, but mind remains quiet. Mind doesn't want to get involved unnecessarily. Mind doesn't want to think unnecessarily. Mind doesn't want to overthink, but you can see, but still you can hear. Smelling also similar, tasting also similar. How about thinking? Thoughts are coming. Why am I claiming it as I think or I am thinking, or these are my thoughts or my ideas? So are we able to look at from an angle, there are thoughts and they are merely thoughts. They have the nature to come, they have the nature to arise, or they have the nature to appear, and they have the nature to disappear. So I interfere. Do you really have to interfere? Do they belong to you? Are the thoughts belong to you? And who is the owner of the thoughts? So nobody, they are merely thoughts, isn't it? So I give a kind of a simile. Now say a certain beggar come to your house. And if you are interested of giving him, supporting him, you can open the door, you can support him, and you can give some money. If you want, you can give some clothing, and if you can give some food and whatever it is, possible, no problem. There may be another instance that you are quite busy and you don't want to interfere. Still that person come and knock the door, but you don't want to. You mind your own business, and he will knock the door and he will go. Is the beggar really an issue to you? Or do you really bound or obliged to every time answer him, give him money, treat him well, feed him well, everything? Are you really answerable every time to every beggar, to every person who is knocking the door? If it's under your choice. Similarly, when thoughts are coming to our mind, some may be answerable, some may be useful, but most of them are useless, isn't it? So many thoughts come into our mind, mostly useless. Maybe 1%, 2% may be useful, but large majority useless. They are like the beggars coming, They want to peep into your house, but if you don't mind, you don't need to. So likewise, so whenever thoughts are there, you can simply ignore them. You can see their impermanent nature. You can see how they are coming and going. You can become dispassionate towards thoughts. So many different possibilities are there to look at thoughts from a wise way. Aniccanupassī, virāgānupassī, nirodhānupassī, patinissagganupassī, any different Vipassana method you can apply towards these thoughts. Then thoughts don't bother you too much, because you know that they are merely thoughts. We don't need to attribute a value to a thought, because thought is not a permanent entity, permanent thing. They are subject to come and go. And so why are we attributing something, some importance, some value to thoughts? Assume it's a series of thoughts. So why are we attributing some value to thought? Why are we considering it is so important? It's my idea, it's a brilliant idea. So that's how we emphasize it. That's how we make something. Then it becomes something. It's very important to me, and then you contribute further, you add more things, you like it, you don't like it, and then we start thinking. We start the thinking machine. Ultimately, we become a victim of that thinking machine. Proliferation. Now, with this scenario, I like to take up the Kalakarama Sutta, one part. So for the Buddha, you can look at how Buddha is looking at the whole thing. So Buddha say, Viññātā viññātabbam viññātaṃ na maññati. So whenever thoughts are there, for the Buddha or the Arahant, it is a merely knowing is there, cognition is there, but he don't make something. My something. It belongs to me, or my something, and then think based upon that. Such conceiving is not there for the Buddha. Only the thinking is there. Only a knowing part is there. Only the cognizing part is there. But he do not conceive considering there is something I am thinking. So he is not making something whenever something comes into the mind. And then aviññātaṃ na maññati. And not only when it is coming, sometimes for us, if it doesn't come, that's also a problem to us. Say for example, you didn't think that he won the election. For example. You didn't think. So other person is asking. You say, I thought that he is going to win. But you say, no, I didn't think like that. And you worried, oh, my goodness, I didn't think like that. I should have think like that. Now you worry about, because you didn't think like that. For not thinking also a problem, not thinking also another issue, not thinking also another something for you to proliferate, to make something. Not only thinking, even not thinking. So, aviññātaṃ na maññati. For the Buddha, there is no such thing. Similarly, viññātabbam na maññati. So, we sometimes think, okay, that is very important thing I need to think. And I might even suggest someone, okay, there is an important area, better you think about it. I can suggest, okay, it is very, very important. You need to consider it. You need to think. You need to spend some time. Very important thing. So you accept it as something very important is there to think. As a result of that, you think, you promote thinking, you promote conceiving. So with the Buddha, such is also not there. The last part is the most important, very interesting part. Viññātāraṃ na maññati. And for us, we think, okay, I am the one thinking. That is my idea, that's my brilliant idea, it is not your idea, it is my idea, I am the one thinking. I thought like that. So there is a person always who is thinking. But for the Buddha, for the Arahants, there is no such thing. There is no person who is thinking. There is no one who is thinking. So sometimes people ask, so say during our discussions or during your even Vipassana, say I can recognize there are thoughts coming in. Bhante, I can see thoughts are coming. I understand thoughts are not me. But who is the one knowing it? Isn't it someone who is knowing it? That is the where, so you attribute the cognition a person. You consider the cognition part as a someone. So that is the most trapped area. Certain areas actually even the other religious group are able to touch. But that observer is someone for them. For the Buddha it is a mere observing. But there is no such person, a self who is observing. Viññātārang na maññati. So for the Buddha and the Arahant, so there may be thoughts, but there is no thinker. So you can see that how beautiful that the Mark Epstein's title of the book, Thoughts Without a Thinker. You can see, they have taken it to that level. So they are Western psychotherapist, Mark Epstein. So he is having a beautiful book, Thoughts Without a Thinker. So you can see how deep the title itself. There may be thoughts, but there is no thinker. Similarly, there may be a cognition, but there is no person who is cognizing. So these are the very interesting areas with respect to the consciousness aggregate actually we can consider. And since someone actually asked about that consciousness part even during the Dhamma discussion, and today this Dhamma sermon also related to the consciousness, I thought of taking some information from that Upaya Sutta coming under the Kanda Sangyutta. So Buddha starts it telling like this: Upayo bhikkhave avimutto anupayo vimutto. That's the very first statement he mentioned in this Upaya Sutta. Upayo bhikkhave avimutto anupayo vimutto. So that means whenever the mind is engaged, it is not free. Anupayo vimutto. When it is unengaged, it is free. It's a kind of a very interesting statement he makes at the very beginning of this sutta. And now he is going to explain Rupa upayangva bhikkhave viññānaṁ tiṭṭhamaṇaṁ tiṭṭhaya. Rupa rammanam, rupa patiṭṭhaṁ, nandupa sevanam, buddhiṃ virulhiṃ vepullam apajjaya. Now Buddha explains Rupa upayangva bhikkhave viññānaṁ tiṭṭhamaṇaṁ tiṭṭhaya. So Buddha mentioned attached to or engage with the form, the consciousness get established. Rupa rammanam. So the form as an arammana, form as an object. Rupa patiṭṭhaṁ, established on the form. The form appear or behave as a base for the consciousness at that time. Rupa patiṭṭhaṁ. And nandupa sechanam. As a result of that, there is a delight arising. Now the consciousness associate the form, it is established there. Not only that, there is a delight as a result of that association. Nandupa sechanam. Buddhiṃ. Now there's a growing happens. So more and more you being conscious, more and more attention is there. Your more attention is provided there. Buddhiṃ, virulhiṃ, further development happens. Vepullam, it comes to the full-fledged, complete attention is now drawn to that. Vepullam apajjaya. Now I like to explain it from a with a simile, for example, now say while you are walking. So you are trying to maintain a fairly unattached mind, for example. But you hear a very beautiful song which you like to hear. At first, what you hear may be certain words, maybe the certain parts of the melody. It gives a certain attention to the mind. Now you want to listen it purposely. Previously you simply heard it, but it gave you a little bit of delight, gave you a little bit of trigger. Now you pay attention to that. You turn your head, you want to hear, you want to be more into that. Now you properly hear, you pay further attention to that. Now you recognize the words, now you recognize who is singing it, you recognize the melody, and you are now slowly. What happened? The attention which was maybe on your foot, your concentration, your attention which was in your foot is now slowly shifted to your ear, to that sound, to that content, all that. Now you are no more at your foot. Your attention is no more at the foot. You are completely shifted to this sound. Now the consciousness is completely established on this sound. And for that, maybe it may be someone who is singing, and it may be a beautiful song and all that. The delusion part is also now there, and your mind is so delighted about it and you like to hear it. Now you stop your walking and you simply close your eyes. You are now completely in that fantasy. You are in a fascination. You are obsessed with that hearing. So this is how the whole consciousness is shifted totally to that hearing. It won't take long time to happen, by the way. So that's why we can't understand this kind of a gradual development of our attention, because quickly, the moment it is happening, so immediately we are taken by that. So similar thing happens to the tastes, smells, touches, and even for the thoughts. You can probably recognize this process, particularly when you are able to maintain a fairly unattached mind. You are able to assume that you are able to maintain a certain amount of unattached mind, unestablished mind, but there may be instances, certain objects, certain sounds, certain sights, smells, tastes, thoughts penetrate you, overwhelm you, overpower you. You can't maintain further that unattached mind. So they interfere you totally, they taken your attention totally, and you are there. You lost yourself, you lost your mindfulness, you are being completely distracted. So this is how the distractions actually happen. Previously you were at the touch, the body consciousness. Now you may be at the complete into the ear consciousness and the mind consciousness. You are trapped there, you are fully there. So likewise, Buddha say, the consciousness either establish likewise in the form aggregate, it can similarly establish on the feeling aggregate, it can similarly establish on the perceptions aggregate, or similarly it can establish in the formations aggregate. Say for example, while you are walking, you feel bored, and there may be a task ahead that you need to do, maybe tomorrow, which is a very important, very interesting, a particular task. Certain thought appear in your mind, talking about it, telling about it. And rather than going through this boring sakmana, boring walking, completely monotonous, now why don't you think about it? So you start thinking. So it's naturally our mind go to that. You start thinking, now more thinking, more planning, completely into thinking, complete imagination, complete planning. So this is how this formations aggregate occupy the mind. Now the consciousness is fully established in the proliferation. Now you are in utter papancha, proliferation, conceptualization. You are trapped in conceptualization. Similarly, say previously your mind is quite clear, quite spacious, no mental images, very much like a very clear water. Suppose you are in walking path, your mind was able to come to that level, your mind is quite clear, spacious, no attachment, but maybe a certain mental image of someone come to you. Say you have a loved one, maybe your son, your daughter, your fiancé, fiancée, whatever, so that image appear in your mind. What happened to the mind then? You feel interested about that image, you feel delighted of that image, you feel triggered by that image, mental image, you add further and further images, slowly. So mind filled with so many images. Previously it is empty. Previously it was empty, but now you have a full mind, not mindful, a full mind, full of images, full of perceptions. So actually the thoughts also immediately start popping up, but maybe the trigger has happened as a result of that image. So the perceptions aggregate also similarly occupies the mind. So your mind get occupied, your consciousness is completely established even in the perceptions aggregate. Feelings are the similar. Whenever there may be a feeling, you start giving some emphasis to it, you start like that, you desire that feeling, and your consciousness get established in that feeling. So you can see how true Buddha saying, so form aggregate is like a home to the consciousness. It's like a home. Feeling aggregate is like a home to the consciousness. Perceptions aggregate is like a home to the consciousness. Similarly, the formations aggregate is like a home to the consciousness. So that's why it's called Niketasari or Okasari. All these different terms, Okasari or Niketasari, all are similar, very similar terms, explaining that always the consciousness prefer to associate a home. Form aggregate is a home for consciousness. Feelings a home for consciousness. Perceptions a home for consciousness. Formations, thinking is a home for consciousness. It has found its footing. It has established, well established. So this is how we are wandering in the samsara. At one instance maybe having a home at form aggregate, at another instance at feelings aggregate, at another instance at the perceptions aggregate, another instance at formations aggregate. Continuously there is a home. But the Buddha is called Anokasari, Aniketasari, homeless. Very interesting how beautifully that he is present in the Dhamma. So his mind does not have a home. His consciousness does not have a home at the form aggregate, at the feeling aggregate, at the perceptions aggregate, at the formations aggregate. So he is called Aniketasari. He is called Anokasari. So the Arahant is called Anokasari or Aniketasari. He's a homeless. So typically when someone is getting ordained, someone say, okay, from household life to homeless life. So from the mundane terms you think, okay, I have my mother, father, my loved ones, my room, my bicycle, my car, and this and that and all that. That is the household life. And you give up everything, you renunciate and you become homeless. So from mundane terms we can understand, but you can see the deep understanding or depth to that term, how the consciousness continuously associate a home, but through Vipassana, how we need to make it homeless. The mind ultimately has to become homeless unestablished. Now, through the Vipassana, so that is the process. So same thing explained in this Upaya Sutta, very, very interesting Sutta. So now it is mentioned here, Buddha explained here, Rupa dhatuyache bhikkhave rago pahino hoti. Ragassa pahana vachitata rammanang patitta viññānassa nahoti. Suppose someone is practicing Kayanupassana. So he is giving some information, okay, this body is like this. It is not really a beautiful, attractive thing. It has so much of loathsome parts. There's nothing important, nothing really valuable, and you give a little bit of dispassion towards this body. Even someone else's body. It gives some loathsomeness and arouse some dispassion, and you reduce certain amount of lust. That is one way. Another way is that you are dissecting the body and understand, okay, anatomically these are different little parts available, and you break up that compactness. So it's difficult for you to attach to dissect, right? Dissected anatomical parts, very difficult to attach. When they are combined together, assembled together, and there's a beautiful cloth around it, may be easy to attach. But when you are given that understanding, it is not a compact body, rather it comprises of so many little components. With that such kind of an understanding, such kind of a wisdom, you can't easily attach. Another way that wisdom is developed. The other most important way is the elements. So you go through a mindful experience about the elements. So whole bodily physical experience is hardness, softness, roughness, smoothness, heaviness, lightness, heat, cold, movements, vibrations. So this is whole experience what we are going through. So when someone is awakened to such kind of elementary characteristics, so mind automatically become more wise. So how the mind going to attach to such kind of a complete dynamic process? A dynamic process is there. There is no person there. There is no I there. There is no individual there. So what is there is these elementary processes continuing, which are dependent on so many other characteristics. So how the mind is now attaching. So likewise, so many different ways. So Buddha give us wisdom. So Buddha provide various different methodologies to develop wisdom in our mind. So the result is, rather than grasping, now the mind start a letting go process, a detached process, dispassionate process. Now, so here Buddha explained the result. Rupa dhatuyache bhikkhave rago pahino hoti. Now to this form aggregate, to this form element, now desire is no more. Passion is no more. Instead, dispassion is there. Rago pahino hoti. Ragassa pahana vachitata rammanang patitta viññānassa nahoti. Now, when lust is not there, desire is not there, grasping is not there, attachment is not there, so that link, the consciousness and form aggregate, that link, attached link is broken, cut off. Rago pahino hoti, ragassa pahana vachitata rammanang. So the object, so-called form aggregate, and the consciousness, that linkage is broken. Patitta viññānassa nahoti. Now established consciousness can't establish now. So ultimately the form aggregate no more provide a home to the consciousness. Where can it find a home now? It can find in feelings. That's the problem. It can find it in the perceptions. It can find in the formations. So that is still there. Still certain traps are there. So that's why we need to practice Vipassana in a fairly deep way, even though sometimes we are fairly, say, skilled in the Kayanupassana, so the developed, unestablished mind in the form aggregate can go and attach with the feelings. You might love that more blissful experience. Another trap. You might love that very beautiful perception you might have in the mind. You get trapped there. Even though the body is not being perceived, there may be thoughts in the mind. You get trapped there. So likewise, that's why the Buddha recommend all four Satipatthana. Through the Kayanupassana, you are able to detach from the form aggregate. Through Vedananupassana, you are able to detach from the feeling aggregate. From Chittanupassana, you are able to detach from the consciousness aggregate and the formations aggregate and even certain amount of perceptions aggregate. And the Dhammanupassana helps you to abandon whatever still remaining into any aggregate. So all aggregates are included there. So you can see how strategical, how scientific is Buddha's approach. So when we understand the reality, what really has happened to us, to the consciousness, and what is the kind of a solution that Buddha is giving us, so profound. And our practice has to lead us towards such kind of an unestablished consciousness then. It can't establish on the form, it can't establish on the feelings, it can't establish in the perceptions, nor in the formations, nor in the consciousness. Ultimately, it has to become independent, unestablished, unmanifested. So this is the kind of a depth we need to understand. So it is not that we are trying for a kind of an annihilation either. So sometimes people think, okay, it's a kind of an annihilation. Actually, the annihilation comes if there is a person, if there is a self. A self has to be there, that self has to be annihilated. So where is the self? So from the beginning, there was no self. From the beginning. So that's why sometimes people, certain Brahmins, so they accuse the Buddha, so he is an Uchchedavadi. He's talking of an annihilation. And Buddha denies it. I don't say a person is going to be annihilated. I don't say a satta, a being, going to be annihilated. And even from the beginning, even now, there is no such person. So very difficult for someone to understand who is more ingrained or taken up by that soul view. Even after Buddha delivers a very profound teaching, so they keep on asking, but what's happened to that self then? Because they are so trapped in the self view. So the Buddha's teaching in that sense is quite unique. And he basically gives that understanding, okay, things can happen as a result of this causal contribution, but there is no a person who is maintained by that causal contribution. So when ignorance is there, you might feel as a person, I am, but that is again a conceiving. Asmiti bhikkhave manyita meta. Ayang ahang asmiti manyita meta. So I am is a manyana, I am is a conceiving. So I belong, this is a conceiving. This I am is a conceiving. So this is a I making, it's a mind making. So we'll discuss further on the same topic tomorrow. So how, next question, actually this, the monk is asking the next question. How this conceiving, I making, mind making going to stop? How are you going to abandon that? So that is his last question. So we'll try to find the answer to that last question tomorrow. With that, I will conclude today's Dhamma sermon. Thank you very much for attentive listening. So there is no any sharing of merits today. So I invite Venerable Dhamma Lankara to conduct the sharing of merits.